My next guest is a welterweight contender from the capital city of Australia, Canberra, and he joins me today. His name is Dimitri Petridis, and I'm really excited to talk to him. Dimitri, welcome. I like your shirt and I like your look because I got a beard and I got a bald head too, man.
Thanks,
So
bro.
we're in good
It's the way
company.
to go. I love it.
Well, happy almost spring to you, sir, and I'm excited to
Thank you,
have
sir.
the opportunity to speak with you today. And I first, Dimitri, wanted to simply start off. I mentioned you're in the capital city. How do you get mixed up with these Queenslanders up north of you? They're an interesting bunch. And what is a nice guy in the capital city of Australia doing with
Um,
guys in the Sunshine Coast?
yeah, so it's kind of a funny roundabout way. So my head coach Ryan, he's like best mate Jimmy, who you just had on the show. They're really close, and they've trained together for years and years. So I kind of like know those guys through association through Ryan. I haven't had a whole lot to do with them other than I've met with Jimmy, I've trained with him a few times. Really good guy. The guy's a savage. And yeah, that's pretty much how I have that connection, the long distance connection for those guys is through my coach Ryan. That's pretty much it. So I've been training with Ryan for a few years, and I've just developed this network through proxy via him, really.
Also hit on just kind of your background in particular. As I understand it, you have a K1 background, but you also have done some jiu-jitsu stuff as well. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about your combat sports journey to date?
absolutely. Yeah, sure. So I started K1 and Muay Thai when I was about 17. I was playing rugby at school at the same time. Um, And so I was playing first division rugby union and started training and fighting at the same age. And then my parents pulled me aside and said, "Hey, listen, you got to choose one of these sports because one, it's a lot of time, and two, the impact on your body is a lot." So I finished playing rugby at school, and after I was done with that, I just took up fighting full time. And yeah, started from there. Had my first fight in about 2 years after I started training when I was about 21, and that was a K1 fight. And then from there, yeah, I was just fighting basically around Australia as an amateur in kickboxing and Muay Thai and K1. Had a few wins, had one loss, and then I kind of like took a bit of a break from fighting for a couple of years. I actually went overseas to Europe, lived over there for a few years, and just sort of you know did the Europe thing. Came back to Australia, took it back up again, and and then I actually ended up getting injured. So around about 26, 27, I had started getting a string of injuries and had to take some more time off from training and fighting. The last injury I had was I blew my ACL, and that was pretty devastating. I actually considered just retiring from the entire thing. But funnily enough, um, during the recovery process, Ryan actually contacted me over Instagram, and we hadn't actually met, but we'd been following each other for a while on Instagram. And I'd always been interested in really starting out MMA, but I put on the back burner with injuries. And then he said, "Hey, like, when you're ready to go, come over and check us out at Canberra MMA. I'd love to have you along." And so, yeah, once I was cleared from the doctor, that like literally the next day, I've gone to Canberra MMA and I stepped onto the mat for the first time in my first jiu-jitsu class. And bear in mind, before that, I'd probably done maybe a dozen BJJ classes over the years,
Sure.
sporadically. So I've always been like doing the striking thing and that. And I instantly fell in love with it. I was like, this is fucking cool. I'm not getting punched in the face, but I get to strangle people and break some limbs. This is awesome. And I was hooked straight away. And then so started doing BJJ a bit more. And I actually moved away from my striking gym and ended up just training at Canberra MMA full time. And that's when I really started really delving into the MMA thing and training that a lot more. And then I started competing in some jits comps. I started winning. I got my blue belt within a year. So Ryan was like, "You're too good for a white belt. Here's your blue belt." Had a couple more comps, winning some. I got silver in my last comp, but that was a great competition. And then yeah, so here I am now. I've had one MMA fight so far, and that was good. I got that pretty well, 8 second finish. And then it was a real struggle to get any more fights, so we just said, "Hey, let's go pro." and that's how we got that connection further with Jane as well, and now here we are. So
Your
yeah,
your story, Dimitri, reminds me of a few different people from your area that I've talked to. Two former rugby players that have made the leap over. I
yeah,
talked to Cobb, he from New Zealand. He
yep,
was on the show not that long ago. I know Jimmy played some rugby. You're a rugby
yeah,
player, and then well, Chelsea Hackett didn't play rugby, but she was a Muay Thai gal, and she made the
yeah,
transition over into MMA. And is that more and more of a common thing from where you're from? Like you see more of like footballers and rugby players
yeah.
making the leap over into MMA. Is that becoming more commonplace?
I actually think so. Yeah. So rugby is a great sport. It's physical. It's great to get your energy out. It's a team sport. However, you do find that a lot of the, especially fellas, they seem to find like rugby and fighting seem to be synonymous with each other. These boys love a biff. They love to throw hands. It's just what they do. It tends to be in your nature as like if you're a physical guy, and you have high levels of testosterone. You just want to get in there and you can have a rough sport. Sometimes rugby can be a little bit not quite enough. And then you think, hang on, let me take up some boxing or something like that. And these guys tend to do both, and then they just suddenly fall in love with MMA, and then they can really get physical. And it also really caters to that competitive edge that a lot of these athletes have. And rugby players are competitive people. You're in a team sport, but you're in a competitive sport. And then I feel like MMA as an individualized sport, although you're in a team, really highlights that competitive nature in a lot of athletes. And so, yeah, I am finding that a lot of my friends who are rugby players as well just take up these combat sports because they just really want to test themselves. And I find MMA is probably one of the hardest and most testing sports you can do, and challenge yourself. So that's what these guys are doing. And so, yeah, it's definitely becoming a commonplace thing with a lot of these young fellas being like, let's just start fighting.
Well, one of the other things I know about you is, and we've hit on it a little bit before, you're a jiu-jitsu blue belt. I look at people like you and I'm like,
Mm,
okay, you can tell this guy is an adept striker. You can tell he's been doing this most of his life. That was very obvious to me when I watched your
yeah.
first amateur bout. But making the move into grappling, it's a totally different world. And when you
Yeah.
talked about you know, a very base knowledge, and then you very quickly advanced and got a blue belt, and you were in various grappling competitions. What's been the hardest thing about learning the grappling element and the jujitsu element of mixed martial arts?
Um, so much of it, hey, it's completely different. It's such a different aspect to the sport. So one of the biggest things I noticed straight away was the fitness level is different. So as a striker, I can sit there and pop away pads and like punch in the face for rounds and rounds and rounds and manage my energy levels, no problem. And I can like pace myself and know when to explode and flow and crash. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's completely different because you're constantly attached to somebody else. So not only are you moving, but you're also moving against someone else who's trying to move as well. So utilizing energy systems that are more grinding, a lot of more isometric holding. So you're holding people, squeezing. So the muscle fatigue is crazy different. And then of course the knowledge, it's so different. Where to put your body in certain positions, where your limbs are. It's complete. It's literally like playing chess with your body, as and it's complete. Yeah, it's so different. So the learning curve was quite steep. I realized, athleticism can only get you so far. You can't just muscle your way out of certain positions. You can't just explode and be like, a spazzy white belt who's athletic. You need to actually learn how to control yourself and control your body, and be a bit more cerebral in that sense. Whereas, in striking, sometimes you can just wail on a guy, and it is a very cerebral thing as well, but it's just so different. The aspects between striking and grappling are almost opposites in how you operate your body. So it's yeah, it's so different. And I definitely took my time to learn that because when I first started grappling, I was definitely relying on my athleticism and my explosive nature to win matches or even in roles like get out of positions. But as soon as I started rolling with more advanced guys, that just didn't work. And so I had to learn how to utilize the skills. It's a skill thing. And it's the discrepancy between the skills is so clear when you roll with these high level grapplers, where even as a blue belt, I can plan ahead a couple of moves, but these purples, browns, black belts, some of these guys, man, they're thinking 10 moves ahead. Like they've already beaten me before we've slapped and bumped. It's crazy.
A controversial question for you, and it'll probably be the most controversial one of this entire
It's all
episode.
good.
So here we go. Is it important to do no-gi training when you are getting ready for an MMA bout? Because is it fair to say that some of the things that you would practice or the techniques that you would hone in on in a gi are a little bit different as far as the carryover into MMA?
I would say absolutely. So I think personally, no gi training as an MMA athlete is more important than training jiu-jitsu in a gi. I love training in the gi. It's fun. It's different, but there's just a lot of things you can do in the gi that you can't quite do in no gi. That especially like, grabbing clothes, grabbing the gi itself. There's a lot more grips involved, a lot more hand fighting and grip fighting in gi. Whereas no gi is a little bit more, I would say, dynamic in nature. It's a bit faster, a lot more scrambles involved. You simply just because you can't quite hold someone down by their gi. And that sort of will translate better into MMA because you're not wearing a gi in MMA. Obviously, in no gi training, you're not punching each other in the face in no gi jits, but it's still a lot more similar to an MMA bout than you would be in gi. It's just that simple. Uh, yeah, 100%. I agree. No gi training super important for that fight simulation, essentially, without getting punched in the face. But then, of course, you can also start to utilize that by doing no-gi training with some MMA gloves on and just simulating punches with your partner. Not punch each other in the face, but you're in a position almost like shadow boxing each other in the face a little bit and sort of getting those positions so you know that in MMA, I can't just go 2-on-1 and just sit there because he's probably going to punch me in the face.
So is it fair to say, in your opinion, and I've always kind of been like amused by this, and I'm not going to drop names, but I will give an example of a good friend of mine. He is on God. He has never put on a gi in his entire life. Strictly no gi. And in his first or second professional MMA bout, he choked out a black belt.
Wow.
And and I asked him that. I'm like, dude, that is completely wild. And he's just like, well, not really. He's like, it's an MMA fight. He's like, it's not.
Yeah.
It's like it's not a. If I were in a gi and against that guy in a jiu-jitsu tournament, it may not have worked out that way. But he's like, it's completely different. And so to that end,
yeah.
I wanted to ask you, like, do people in the media, do commentators, do we talk about like the belts a lot more than we should when it comes to like actual MMA?
That's a really good question. I think that there's a lot of emphasis put on the belts. Like it's a lot. But end of the day, if you're just a jiu-jitsu, if you only practice jiu-jitsu and then you get to an MMA bout and you're getting punched in the face, like you're on the ground and you're trying to grab a limb or something like that, and the old mate is on top of you wailing on you, that's gonna completely screw up with your plan. So, and I've had this experience with some of the guys I train with who are higher level belts than me, but when we're doing MMA classes or they come in to help me roll and we're doing MMA stuff, they might try to jump in a submission and there I am punching them or pretending to elbow them in the face. It's like, it's so different. And one of the things my coach Ryan said is like, if you're grappling with a high level belt in an MMA match, every time you punch them in the face, they lose a stripe. Yeah, you go down a belt, you lose a stripe, you go down a belt. And it is true because even like for me, I'm on the bottom and someone's punching me in the face. My first reaction isn't to be like, oh, let me just go for this technique. It's like I need to stop getting punched in the fucking face. This is shit. So, like, yeah, 100%. I feel like belts, like the level of grappler you are is extremely important. And like you get guys and like obviously top level UFC guys, Charles Oliveira, incredible black belt. He gets knocked on his ass and then he's submitting with a fucking triangle off his back.
Right.
Obviously, it's extremely important to be a high level grappler. But there are also times when you can be a high level grappler, but you're getting smacked around. That's not really helping you that much. So I feel like there needs to be there's a balance involved. you can't just rely on your grappling if you're an elite level grappler. You can fight a guy who's wailing on you.
I want to shift gears a little bit. I wanted to talk about your amateur debut. It was in the Enduro
Yep,
Fight Series last year. 13 months
that's right.
have lapsed since that bout.
Yeah,
Wow. There was a lot to talk about, despite there not being a lot of footage on you. It was
yeah.
completely 10 out of 10 performance for you, but it was also
Thanks, bro.
interesting. Like you were also going to fight at that time a really high level striker, just like yourself.
Mm.
And give me your thoughts, like when you were getting ready to fight Kevin Piras, like where was your mind at? And can you kind of like walk me through just the lead up into that bout, and when you reflect back on that performance, like what were your main takeaways?
Yeah, sure, man. So that was a really, really interesting camp because I had actually was supposed to fight a few months before that as well, and I actually broke my hand the week before the fight. And that was fucking shit. So we had to put that on the post. We had to burn that one, and then we started prepping for Kevin after that. I had about 4 weeks notice for that fight. So that was a tough camp because I came back from injury, trying to find out how long it would take to heal, and then found out 4 weeks before that fight I got a fight. Cool, fighting Kevin, really high level striker, and an underrated ground game too. He had a few submission wins under his belt, from what I know. And so my mindset coming into that fight was really just showcase my skills, really prep for a guy who is going to try and stand and bang, which is great. That suits me perfectly, and really show that I can stand in there and fight someone who is at a level a bit more experienced than me. Now, leading into that fight, the training was just simply let's make him feel like he's running to a brick wall. He's going to come out. He's going to try to throw some kicks because he's a taekwondo guy, and I'm just going to slam some heavy shots into him and make him feel like he's really like hit someone who's hard to deal with. So yeah, coming into that, it was a really rough cut because I had 4 weeks notice and I was sitting pretty heavy. So that camp wasn't probably the best when it comes to prepping a game plan. It was more just let's just utilize the skills we have. 4 weeks isn't a lot of time to develop anything further than what we have. So let's just have good skills on the feet, work on our distance management, and making sure that if he wants to take us down, we keep the fight standing and we do what we want to do. And if he does take us down, stand back up, keep going. And then after that, it was pretty much just focusing on making weight for that fight because that was hard, man. That was a grind.
Well, you went
Yeah.
out there, and from my recollection, it was just a 1-2 right down the middle, and it just completely clocked him. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
liked the stoppage, and some people, might get a little bent out of shape by it, but it was an amateur bout,
Yeah.
and his arms completely like hit the canvas, like he was done. And if I'm
Well,
a
his head bounced off the canvas like a basketball,
he
man.
woke up again after his head bounced.
Mm.
So that's what happened,
Yeah.
in my estimation. I looked at it and I'm like, hey, for amateur rules fight, I'm calling that fight too. I thought the referee did a fantastic job. That might
I
be a
thought so. And
say, but just looking at it objectively, I thought it was the right call.
yeah,
And I was just going to ask if you agreed with that.
listen, like I understand why people think it was fast because yep, he got up and he was like, "Hey, I'm fine, I'm fine." But if you watch it, I clocked him with a it was a 1-2-3. It was a 1-2 and then a hook that dropped him. And someone's like, "Oh, his coach tried to say that he slipped." I'm like, his legs gave out, his head bounced off the canvas, and I was ready to jump on top of him, about to start landing big shots. The ref jumped in. Sure, he seemed like he wasn't like unconscious, but another 10, 20 seconds, I was just going to keep wailing on him anyway. And yeah, so I think it was a fair stoppage. If that was me and I got hit like that, I would have been like, you know what, fuck, fair enough. I got dropped.
Sure.
It sucks, yeah. And I would have been like, oh, I could have kept fighting, but end of the day, you got dropped, man. Like
Well,
when your head bounces like that off the canvas, it's a pretty bad look.
but it's also the other interesting dynamic though, Dimitri, and it's like this, like very seldom is a fighter gonna get creamed like that and be like, you know what, it was a good stoppage. Like
Yeah, no, fair enough.
mean, and I understand that. It's like you have to say that. I get it. You know, you're a
I get it.
fighter,
Yeah.
right? Like you guys are all wired the same way. And
Yeah,
hey,
you don't want to be like, yeah, I got fucked up.
yeah, and that's why I'm glad I'm not the ref. That's a tough job. But
It is a tough job.
I give him full credit. He prevented your opponent from taking on unnecessary damage, and hey, that's his job. That's his job. When
That's his
it's
job.
no
It's
longer
literally, yeah.
necessary, you got to call it.
Yeah. And there was some like friction between my coach and his coach afterwards. And Ryan was saying the same thing. He's like, dude, it's an amateur fight. I don't really want to see a dead body.
Yeah.
Like it could have been a little bit earlier, but at the same time, I was ready to pounce on him, and like it's an amateur fight, man. Like you're not getting paid. Why do you want to get smashed?
And the
Like,
records don't matter really anyway. It's basically a glorified spar. That's kind of how I view.
yeah, it's fine.
And full respect to Kevin. I hope he regroups and goes on to have a very successful career. But
Yeah, well, actually, I think he went pro after that. I think he had his first pro fight, the next fight after that. So yeah, like, and he's a really nice guy. I got a lot of time for Kevin. Like, we had a good chat out the back afterwards. Like, he's a nice dude.
well, I wish him the best of luck moving forward. And
Hmm.
for you,
Hmm.
we're going on 13 months without a fight. And how is it? So I'm sure
Yeah.
there's a story to that. Like nobody knocks out somebody like that and says to themselves, you know what? I'm going to go on holiday for 13 months. Nobody would say
No,
that. So what's the
no.
deal? And can you give me some backstory and context behind what's been going on?
Yeah, for sure, man. Easy. We were struggling to find fights. That's simple. After that fight, we were hunting for a few more amateur fights, and we were just struggling, man. Everyone was like, nope, nope, no. We'll fight him later, or we had a couple, probably about 3 or 4 guys say yes, and then they all pulled out.
Mm.
So it was a fucking grind, man. Like we were trying so hard to find fights, and that's actually when Ryan contacted Jane and said, "Hey, like, can you help us? Because obviously she's a manager, and that's basically her job." We got her to try to help us out because Ryan was just stressing out, and I was stressing out trying to find fights. And also, the hardest part is, when you're trying to find fights and you have guys say yes, and then so you're like, all right, cool, let's prep, get into camp, and then suddenly you get a no. Like you're 3 weeks into a camp, you're like, fuck, man, like, dude. So you got to like constantly recycle your energy levels and your mental capacity. And like when you're trying to like plan ahead and you manage your diet and everything, and your training camp and you got training partners, and then these guys say no constantly. It's just like this roller coaster up and down, this like shitty cycle. So that was literally what it was like for like 12 months of that, just trying to find fights. And then we finally had Sam said yes to fighting me on Hex, which is awesome. I'm so glad that he said yes. To be honest, like I'm just grateful that I have a guy who wants to fight. Um, so more than anything, I'm grateful to Sam saying yes, let's fight because like I want to fight. Like we having people say, oh, there's no welterweights fighting, and then next you look at like all these cards with welterweights fighting. I'm like, I'm a welterweight. I'm standing here like a fucking honeymoon prick, waiting to get like, you know what I mean? So
Well,
yeah, it's just a bit rough.
so is the fact that you're having such a difficulty obtaining an amateur bout, was that what kind of like spurred you to just go right to the professional ranks because Sam was
That's
the
exactly
one
what it
that's
was.
ready to dance?
Yep, that's literally what it was. So I was like, yeah, let's have a couple more amateur fights. No amateurs want to fight, and so I sat down with Ryan. Said he's like, you just want to like go pro. Hopefully, there's more guys there that will actually say yes. And you'd think so because they're professional fighters. And so yeah, contacted Jane. So we're on pro. This is what we're doing, and yeah, eventually we finally got a fight. But yeah, that was exactly what it was. It was the fact that I couldn't get any amateur fights. It was just like let's just turn pro, give it a crack, and go from there.
You'll be fighting Sam Marles. I hope I said his surname correctly. If I didn't, I
I think
apologize.
so. Yeah.
Hex Fight Series 27. That fight will be in
Yep.
Melbourne later this month on 18 August.
Let's go.
What do you know about Sam? What is it? What is so exciting about this matchup? He's a 1-0 guy, so obviously there's quite a bit of talent there.
Yeah, he's 1-0 as a pro. I think he's at about 6 or 7 amateur fights. I think he's 6-1 possibly. I know he's a very talented grappler. He's got good wrestling. He's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, so he's dangerous on the ground. I know that, and he's got some amateur boxing experience too. So he definitely can't sleep in his striking. So he's a well-rounded mixed martial arts fighter. He knows how to bang. He's athletic. He's a bit taller than me too. So he's got plenty of skills, and I think it's going to be a very exciting matchup. It's definitely a grappler versus striker kind of matchup, which is cool. I love those sort of classics. So I think it's going to be a cracking fight, to be honest. I think we're going to come out there, both going to try to showcase our skills and really give it a red hot go to see who comes out on top.
Controversial question number 2. It'd be simply
Let's do it.
this. So if I'm Sam, I'm looking at you and I'm going to say to myself, not striking with this guy. I'm gonna level change right away. I'm gonna make this the most boring fight I possibly can. I'm gonna smother this guy. I'm gonna make him wrestle with me. I'm gonna make him grapple with me. It's gonna be a boring fight. This guy's not even gonna touch me. Why is that game plan not gonna work?
That game plan is not going to work, so I'm not going to let him.
All right, perfect. There we go. I don't think you even need to elaborate.
Yeah, to be fair, I think that's what is definitely an aspect of his plan. Definitely gonna try and grapple me, and that's cool. I think that we've prepped really well for that. And the thing is, in the past 18 months, I haven't just been boxing. I haven't just been striking. I've been grappling. I've been working with some of the best wrestlers that we have in town. Our wrestling coach, Chris Baker, he's currently over in Jordan at the moment, wrestling, representing Australia. So we've got high level grapplers that I've been working on every day for basically the past 18 months. So bring it on.
Absolutely. So I did want to hit on one kind of thing. Obviously, there's the striking element. I mean, from here on out, I will associate you as being like a high level striker. Like that is what I see.
That's fine with me.
Fight. What is it besides your striking that you feel gives you an edge over Sam? Is there other intangibles about your game that you feel are important to also disclose apart from just the striking?
Yeah, I think one of the things I have that's definitely underrated is my work capacity. I can go for a while. I've got a good gas tank, and I feel like my fight IQ is quite high as well. I do like to, adapt in the cage. I have a game plan, but I see things. I have the foresight to adapt on the fly. So as the quote goes, everyone has a game plan to get punched in the face. But if you have 2 or 3 different plans afterwards, you can adapt, you can change, you can make changes on the fly, which I think is something that I do quite well. And I feel like my grappling is definitely a bit underrated, to be honest. I'm only a blue belt, but again, like we said before, belts only matter so much in a fight.
I completely understand. And with your pro debut being so close, like you can almost taste it, like
so close, man.
And I've always been kind of curious, like when you get ready to like make this walk for the very first time, like it's just crazy because it's like we have such a small amount of a small window between now and the fight. And what's like the most important thing like at this point? Because you've put the work in, that's obvious. You've put the work in. And do you almost like in a way like have to be even more disciplined in the sense where it's like, okay, I can't go freaking crazy. I can't do all like the cool stuff I want to do because I don't want to get injured. I'm trying to cut weight. Like, do you have to kind of like mentally shift focus to something else?
Yeah, for sure. Especially coming to fight week, you've done all the hard work, all the physical work's there. You're not going to get much fitter in a week. It's all about just like, you obviously got to make the weight. So making weight's important. The mental game, just making sure you're staying focused. I find like visualization is a very important thing. So obviously training is starting to dial back a little bit, but still hitting out a little bit with the boys, getting pad work in, but shadowboxing, visualization, moving, staying sharp, staying dialed in mentally, really like doing all that kind of stuff to make sure that you're on point which is what I do anyway. I like to make sure that I'm still like staying as sharp as possible without putting my body through too much stress, because we don't need to now. Like making sure the body is least stress as possible, but making sure the mind is like as sharp and as dialed in as I can. Because like when I'm making that walk up to the cage, I want to know that I've put every ounce of effort mentally and physically into my preparation, so that when I'm in that cage, I am the best possible athlete possible, like that I could be.
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned before, 18 August is only a few short days away. And
Dude, can't wait.
I wanted to give you, Dimitri, an opportunity. Are you well, number one, first and foremost, are you still selling tickets for the event? Like if people are interested and they're in the area and want to watch you fight, how can they do that?
I believe the actual event's sold out, but you can stream it live on Hex FC, their Instagram page. They have a link. You go on the link and just watch it, like stream it live too. So I'm pretty sure you can do that. But yeah, I believe all tickets are sold out at the moment. So
And if
yeah.
you are diabolical and insane, that fight will happen on August 18th at 2 a.m. my time. So if you're diabolical
Watch it.
or have insomnia and you're here in the States, 2 a.m., ladies and gentlemen, you can wake up and have a pot of coffee and a baguette or something. How about that?
Yeah, watch the fight, then go back to sleep for the rest of the day. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely. I wanted to also give you if there's a message that you have for your supporters. I know that there's a lot of people that work with you, and you've had a lot of people behind the scenes that have made 18 August a possibility for you. So if there's anyone that you would like to thank, or if you have a message for your supporters, Mike is yours, sir.
Absolutely. First of all, I wanted to thank Hex FC for putting me on. Like that's like a huge opportunity for me, and I really appreciate it. My coaches, Ryan, John, Christian, all my teammates. Big thanks to Jane for helping me like get this match up as well. And thank you also to a couple of my sponsors, real quick. Barbell Foods, local guys that I actually went to school with. They've supported me through all my fight camps. They're amazing. They've done so much for me. And Gym Meals Direct as well, another local company. Those guys are killing it for us. They've made my fight camp a lot less stressful. So thank you all to them. And to all my family and friends who are supporting me throughout this entire camp. I couldn't do it without you. And to everyone who's going to watch, I hope you enjoy the show. I'm going to put on the best performance possible, and watch me just throw down and see what happens.
Well, I look forward to watching it, sir. Make sure you check this out. And if you're new to Dimitri and you're just finding out about him for the very first time, please follow him on Instagram. I'll put all of his information
Let's go
in the description for this video. Dimitri, I appreciate your time, sir. I wish you the best of skills.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for having me on.